Hey everyone, have you heard about gluten-free foods? Are you familiar with gluten? There are some great videos on YouTube on this subject, so I'm not going to claim this one to be comprehensive, but let me just give you the quick lowdown. Gluten is the protein associated with wheat. I believe it's also associated with rye and barley. There is a certain percentage of people who cannot properly digest the gluten protein. There are a number of reasons for this gluten intolerance, one of which is something known as celiac disease. But it is becoming more and more commonly diagnosed. People who have this intolerance often find themselves repeatedly in the doctor's office with a variety of symptoms, things like irritable bowel syndrome, stomach problems, bloating, dermatitis, and the list goes on. Many times in the past, doctors have been able to prescribe treatments for these symptoms, which seem to solve the problems, but then they find themselves back in the doctor's office a few months later with another problem. Often this turns out to be a gluten intolerance. One of the many problems with our healthcare system is that sadly our doctors are educated by pharmaceutical companies. Not to say that medical schools aren't good, not to say that they're not well trained, but once a doctor is practicing, it seems to me that they are most made aware of ailments that have a treatment sold by the pharmaceutical companies. Of course, it makes sense. They send sales reps out, they teach doctors about how to treat things that they make drugs that have a solution to. The medical community is finally getting caught up on this gluten intolerance idea. There aren't pharmaceutical drugs to treat this. Maybe the symptoms, but it leads to greater problems if it continues to go ignored. Often people who are gluten intolerant, if they continue to eat gluten as they get older, can develop things like diabetes. So the medical community, because they're not being educated by the pharmaceutical companies, has caught on to this now, and it is increasingly being diagnosed very heavily. So there are more and more quality gluten-free foods coming onto the market. But what's more interesting to me, because I'm not someone who is gluten intolerant, is that they're starting to find that it's somewhat unhealthy the amount of wheat that we Americans have in our diet. Because we produce so much wheat in this country, it is an inexpensive, heavily used grain. Now, while it makes breads delicious, it is also used as a filler in a lot of things that it doesn't need to be in. It's used to thicken sauces, soups. Most of the soy sauces out there have wheat in it. It's not really a necessary ingredient. And there are a lot of things that you can get, pastas for example, that are made out of rice flour rather than wheat flour. And so because it's inexpensive, we Americans have much more wheat flour and more wheat in general, more gluten in our diets than many parts of the country where they use many more of these grains. Now here, when you buy products that have less wheat flour and instead other types of grains, tends to be more expensive. But they're starting to find, or at least some theorize, that the amount of gluten that we all digest is unhealthy for a number of reasons. So I'm going to link a video over here that's much more comprehensive, that has people who are experts, that has good graphics showing you how this works. And I recommend you watch it if you're interested in improving your diet. Take a look at this video. It's very informative. This is something I really didn't know much about until more recently. And you know, as I'm getting older, I'm getting more interested in trying to have a healthy diet. And there are a lot of things out there I just didn't know about. So I'm here to share, and I'm here to encourage you to find out more about gluten-free foods. Thanks for watching.